Hello and welcome back to the fifth and final installment of the classical River Valley civilization of India. Today we will look at the dynasties of ancient India. Now, just a reminder, a dynasty is when a family stays in power and the power passes down from generation to generation to generation. And so when we talk about dynasties, the family name usually goes in front of that dynasty. So here we go. So the first dynasty that we will take a look at, and again, please make sure you're looking at um, part five of your notes. All right, and we're going to take a look at the Mauryan dynasty. Now, the Mauryan dynasty starts with this guy, really tough looking, Chandragupta Maurya. And his big thing was the fact that he goes and unites both the Indus and the Ganges River Valley under one rule. Now, let's go back to our first lesson with the river valley, early river valley system. Rivers provided food, that natural topsoil that was great for farming, and so the Indus River provided that. Add another river, the Ganges River, and their topsoil and their rich farmland, and all of a sudden, bam, you got double food supply. And so, what happens with the Mauryan dynasty is you have a population boom when it comes to food and population, and just a massive, massive growth for the Mauryan dynasty. And as you can see here, you have the under the Chandragupta's dynasty, under Chandragupta himself, I should say, you have this large piece of land going across northern India. Now, on your note packet, please make sure that you're paying attention to your maps because it does get a little bit of confusion happening here. And I'll work on that for next time. But keep in mind, this is Chandragupta Maurya's empire here. So just all I want you to do with this is take a look at it and draw in the blue area. So if you look at it, you have the Indus River right here. You're going to have the Ganges over here. So kind of use those as guidelines. I like to call this little peninsula here India's little chicken wing. All right. So notice the fact that the southern border is above it. If you want to add Arabian Sea to the southwest and the Bay of Bengal to the southeast, you're more than welcome to. That just kind of reinforces some geography in there. But you do not need to know the cities and things of that nature. All right? Awesome. Moving on. So his son takes over, and his son did well. He kind of doesn't do a whole lot. He stays kind of in the general vicinity of what his father did. However, his grandson, Asoka Maurya, expands the empire southward. And in doing so, and again, we're talking about the grandson of Chandragupta. When he expands south, these people in central and southern India aren't like really pleased with what he's doing. They kind of are hesitant. They don't want this guy coming in here and taking over. And so it's going to lead to conflict. It's going to lead to war. It's going to lead to devastation. And so, again, keep in mind, even though it says Ashoka over here, keep in mind the translation kind of varies back and forth from Ahsoka to Ashoka. So it's the same person. However, if you look at the background of this comic, you'd see devastation. You see structures being burned. This is nothing. This is not a bonfire, people. We're not talking about, hey, come on over. We're roasting hot dogs and we're going to have some s'mores. No, this is definitely not that. So when he goes and visits, and the fact that he does conquer most of India, and we use the word most because it kind of helps us remember that's the Mauryan had most of India. He notices that there's a lot of death and destruction, and it gets to him, and that kind of goes into this idea of the spreading of Buddhism that we'll get to here in a little bit. But again, this idea of him repenting, I guess, feeling guilty. It's kind of like to me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Grinch and how he stole Christmas, and then after he stole everybody's stuff, his heart grew 3 sizes that day, and so. to me, it kind of feels like that. And in doing so, he spreads Buddhism. It's kind of bring things back. Now, what happens to him after he dies? Now, well, not him, but what happens to the empire, I should say. Sorry about that. What happens to his empire after he dies? Well, the thing is this. You have a very strong leader like Ahsoka, and you're going to see this pattern happen over and over and over and over and over again. You see it with Alexander the Great. What happens with him? You see it with China, that you'll see here in a few weeks. You see it with Rome. You see it with the Muslim empire when we talk about Islam, where you have a very strong leader who expands and spreads their empire, and the leaders that come after aren't as strong. And so eventually the Mauryan dynasty is going to fall apart after the death of Ahsoka. So this is what Ahsoka gets. So it's the same dynasty, same empire. Remember, Ahsoka spreads the granddad. Remember, the granddad's empire was up here, and he spreads it south. He expands south. He goes to war with the people down here. All right. So there's a map at the bottom. At the top of the page now, and again, look for where it says the Mauryan Empire under Ahsoka. That's what we're looking for. And remember, this is the Mauryan, so they have most of it. So now you notice that the dark blue line has expanded south. It does include a little chicken wing right here. So keep that in mind. All right? So massive empire. And again, when Ahsoka dies, all these people are still mad at what he has done, and they rebel. And then this blue line eventually just travels further, going back on north, and it turns to chaos. So what does the Mauryans leave behind? What is their major Western contribution to the world, not just the Western world, but to the world itself? Number one, sorry, my oven's ready. I'm working on dinner. But again, spread of Buddhism. All right. And again, Ahsoka converts from Buddhism, or to Buddhism from Hinduism. Remember, he, like Siddhartha Gautama, started off as Hindus and became Buddhists. Or he becomes Buddhist, yes, and so does Ahsoka, because he becomes, I'm thinking about dinner now. But so does Siddhartha, because he does become Buddha himself. But again, after seeing all the death and destruction that he's caused indirectly, he has these pillars built that kind of describe Buddhism and Siddhartha's story, Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, things of that nature throughout the empire. But again, spreads Buddhism through the missionaries. This is kind of ironic to me. He causes death and destruction, but then offers free hospitals. That's nice of him. He also offers and creates the idea of veterinary clinics. So not only am I helping you, I'm helping your pooch or your little kitty cat. And then you have improvement of roads. As you saw, that the map is massive. The Mauryan Empire is massive, spreading as far south as it did. And in turn, what ends up happening is you got to connect them. So he builds more roads and expands and makes that happen. And you see that pattern also throughout world history. You see it with the Romans, we see them with the Incas, and how their massive empires are connected because of the road system. Now, as the Mauryan dynasty starts to deteriorate after the death of Ahsoka, we see this family come up, the Gupta dynasty. Now, the Guptas come into play way after the Mauryans, but they are a very powerful, very influential dynasty. They are created by a guy named Chandra Gupta. Now, there's no relationship at all between Chandra Gupta and the former head of the Mauryan dynasty, Chandragupta Maurya. So, two different people. So keep that in mind. Now, Chandragupta, he learns from history. He learned from the Mauryans not to make the same stupid mistakes that Ahsoka does. So you know what? He keeps his empire up north. He keeps it by the rivers, so that way they can have the food and they don't have to worry about war and conflict. And to me, that was the smartest move that Chandragupta ever made. And so there is the Gupta Empire. Again, just going across the northern part of India, including both rivers, having plenty of food for his people. And again, he's letting the central and the southern parts of India do their thing. He's up there going, you know what? You do you. I've got my rivers. I've got my food. I'm good to go. So what happens with the Gupta dynasty? What is their big thing? Well, you know what? They don't go to war. It's a very peaceful, very prosperous dynasty. Prosperous meaning they do well for themselves. And this is when India goes into what they call a golden age. So if you can remember the Gupta dynasty that starts with a G and golden age also starts with a G, it's an easy thing to remember. So here's what happens with the Gupta. When they have time to focus in their energies away from war and not making weapons and armor, they focus on math and they come up with this idea of zero, the number zero itself, the number that means nothing, but it is very powerful. Think about this. You're supposed to get a paycheck for $150. Your employer screws up, adds an extra zero. Boom, all of a sudden you get a check for $1,500. You bet the house you're going to go to the bank and cash it, aren't you? Daggone straight. I know I would. What's going to happen next is they focus on the medical advances in the world of medicine. They realize that if you fix the bones that are broken and you set them properly, they heal faster. And guess what? You can use them again. What? Mine just got blown. In the world of science, astronomy, this is way before Galileo Figaro, as well as way before Christopher Columbus, toot toot on his ships. They came up with the idea that the earth was round. What? The touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of our lives comes from India during the Gupta Empire. Not only does cotton help us with our tidy whities, but also helps stuff our teddy bears. A very useful fabric. Thank you, Gupta people. And last but not least, they focus on literature, writing, and one of the longest, I'll be all right, longest poems in the world, still to this day here in 2021, is the poem called Mahabharata. Don't ask me what it means. I have no earthly clue. But what I do know is that this poem has 440,000 lines. That's a long poem. I don't know if I could sit that long to write that many lines. But I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And thank you for tuning in and finishing up the India unit. Next time, we will begin looking at the last of the River Valley civilizations, which is China. And then we'll do Persia, and then we'll go to Greece, and then we will be having our semester break. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again. Stay safe, and until next time.